From the land of duck,
loon?
this is Minnesota Unknown.
Each episode, we'll take a deep dive into Minnesota's storied past, with a special emphasis on the surprising, the unusual, and little-known history hidden in plain sight.
I'm Josie Bergman.
I'm Alex Weston.
And I'm Hannah Norton.
And we are
Minnesota Unknown. So, I am going to play you a little clip here, and I want you guys to both tell me what your first thought is. Ready?
Let's do this.
Stupid Canadian wolf bird. And Alex?
That would be the unmistakable cry of the common loon, Minnesota's state bird.
And what if I told you that I knew each of you were going to have exactly the reaction that you had?
It's almost like we're friends.
So that was indeed not the cry of a common loon. That was someone doing an impersonation of
Seriously?
the common loon. Yes.
That was
That's a
very
really good loon.
Play that again?
Yeah.
Oh, so now you speak bird too.
Fluent.
I hate you.
Alex?
Well, I was immersed in the soundscape. I was up north. There was a fire. I heard the plaintive cry of a common loon, and then a line of dialogue in an accented English from a property I don't recognize.
Wow, you would be awesome in a court of law or like giving a witness statement or something.
Deposition.
All right. So that was, in fact, allegedly an impersonation of loon tremolo, which is a territorial loon call.
And how
So
that's going to be so
the part that
important.
sounded like a loon is a person.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then his friend responding to him.
Yeah.
Is it his friend? I guess you could say
What is
that.
this from?
They're
Is-
friends.
This is from Heated Rivalry.
Oh, okay.
And that's his friend. Yeah, they're friends.
okay.
They do things friends do.
Enough said.
They're roommates. So, yes, that is. Let me just play one more time. Same thing. Territorial loon call. That was the call of Gavia Immer, otherwise known as the common loon, otherwise known as Josie said, the stupid Canadian wolf bird. But before it was known as the stupid Canadian wolf bird and gained the international recognition that it has, especially within the last year, it was Minnesota's state bird. And I think we're all aware of that, but we've been seeing more of it lately, obviously because of hockey-related romantic shows. And also the rebel loon symbol that's become a big thing during the ICE protests and marches that we've had here. So that kind of led me down a fun rabbit trail of learning a little bit about what's the deal with loons? How did they become our state bird? Why are they our beautiful figurehead?
What's behind those glowing red eyes?
What's behind those beautiful red eyes? So back in the 1930s, it was kind of a time where, well, Alex, I'm sure you can kind of weigh in on this, but what was going on as far as like the conservation movement in the 1930s?
Well, you had the New Deal and the WPA, and they were, making park trails and building those cute log cabin shelters in national parks and things. And,
WPA meaning?
the Works Progress Administration and the Civilian Conservation Corps and other New Deal programs that were putting people back to work because it was the middle of the Great Depression.
Right. And we talked about this a little bit in our bear episode. Highly recommend. But that was a time when it was kind of a little bit of a swing back from this attitude that had been kind of going on since the pioneer days in America, where it was kind of like, okay, we got to take over the land from the wilderness and we got to beat back these wolves and these bears and all this kind of stuff. And they were sort of starting to turn to this idea of let's preserve the wilderness. Let's keep some of these animals alive because they're part of what makes the land itself.
You had the conservation movement kind of coming of age in the early 1900s, and it's aligning with both a sense that now that America truly stretches from sea to shining sea, we miss that wilderness that we're, it's gone. And, perhaps beginning of a reckoning that some resources like forests were not inexhaustible.
Yeah. So back in the 1920s, the Women's League, which was a group that kind of had like a lot of political projects back in the day related to conservation and sort of relating with the land that we live on a little bit more, they decided that each state needed to have a state bird. Prior to the 1920s, there were not really state birds. And it's just kind of like this big push of national parks forming and zoos forming. And like Alex talked about, all of these kind of civilian work projects. And it just kind of fit in with the zeitgeist of the time. And so there's this big push that like, oh, each state should pick a bird that will kind of be like its symbol. And I think we all know now, like a lot of states have like their state flower or plant or whatever.
Or a muffin.
Now,
Or fossil. Giant beaver.
Drink. Minnesota's is milk.
oh, well, that makes sense. And
That's why I belong
I
here.
have a feeling, this may be totally wrong, but I have a suspicion Minnesota has more official state things than most states. I think we really like
We really
think
love
we,
ourselves.
we love an identity.
We
Yep.
love a brand. Okay, so there's this big push in the 20s, but after that, it actually takes a really long time for all the states to settle on their birds.
Oh, okay, I want to guess who was...
Yeah.
Don't say it out loud. I want to guess who was last. Okay, I think the last one to pick a state bird... Well, okay, part of me wants to say Alaska because it wasn't a state until like way late. Or
That would
Hawaii?
make sense.
When was Hawaii? No, Alaska was a...
They were both 1959.
Right, that's pretty late.
I bet
but-
it's like Pennsylvania.
I think it was an original colony.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I'm going Ohio, final answer.
So we have New York. They adopted the eastern bluebird in 1970. Funny thing is, Pennsylvania
I
has
guess
still
I'll
not
look for-
chosen their official state
Get
bird.
with the program, Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
But
Didn't I say Pennsylvania is going to be last?
Yes,
I
you
see.
did.
Yeah.
Okay, so Pennsylvania still has not chosen their official state bird, but
Hey, if they don't choose soon, I'm going to choose for them, and they might not like my choice.
they have
Yeah.
chosen a state game bird, which is the ruffled grouse. So, or the
Why-
which is the ruffed grouse.
Why not
I am
just
a-
have that the state bird?
I'm a rough you up, little grouse.
You would have to ask Pennsylvania. So we're
I
still
will.
waiting on
Next
that.
time I see them, first
Yeah.
thing I'm bringing up.
At the
Okay.
next family reunion.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're going to see him. So this was a long-term effort. And the first one to do so was Kentucky. So they adopted the northern cardinal in 1926. More and more states kind of hopped on the train and thought this was a good idea. But you would be interested to know that there's a lot of overlap in state birds.
There's
So-
only so many birds.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So like 7 states ultimately pick the cardinal as their state bird.
Okay, get more original.
So 5 other Midwestern type states chose the western meadowlark, Kansas, Montana, Nebraska, North Dakota, and Oregon.
Wow.
So they're all kind of picking on each other's territory.
Yeah.
So Minnesota, wouldn't you know, we have a little bit of a struggle with commitment. We're back and forth, flying high, flying low. Someone suggested the goldfinch. Someone suggested the red-winged blackbird. Iowa, Washington, and New Jersey, though, ultimately also picked the goldfinch. So it'd be kind of a lame choice anyway.
I assume nobody could pick the bald eagle because that's the
Kind of
national
America.
one.
That's
Like,
the America
yeah,
bird.
right.
I will tell you, they come up later on. So we're a little bit back and forth. We thankfully did not pick the goldfinch because everyone else had already picked it. The Minnesota Women's Club initially voted the robin as its favorite, which I also think is kind of lame. That seems like a very basic answer.
And are they making the decision, or is there
Well,
like a
it's-
state
no.
commission for this? Was it presented as
We're getting there.
a plebiscite?
We're getting there. But remember, it was the National Organization of Women's Clubs that had initially started
started
this
this.
push. So our chapter was like, we like the idea of
Got it.
robins. Robins can be nice. And then
This is
everyone
a
else was
basic
like,
ass bird.
no, not robins.
When it becomes a state bird, I assume at some point it has like the governor signs a proclamation. It
We're going
has
to get
some.
there, Alex. Don't worry.
Okay,
It
I'm
has
just-
the legislature has to decide on it.
Yeah.
It's
okay.
an official thing. So other birds were suggested besides the robin, the meadowlark, and the American goldfinch. The eastern goldfinch was bumped in 1947 because Representative Louis Hill Jr. of St. Paul
What?
insisted, incorrectly according to birders, that the yellow songbird didn't spend its winters north of Anoka. So they were like, that's not a true Minnesota
So
bird.
it's not representative of the northern half of the state.
Yeah, but
I
apparently
feel like
that-
that's good and ecumenical.
I mean, that's a good suggestion, but apparently it does winter north of Anoka.
Oh, so he
oopsies.
was peddling misinformation
Well,
with his anti-goldfinch ways. And this is, just to clarify, Louis Hill Jr., the grandson of railroad baron and friend of the pod, James J. Hill.
Yep.
Yeah.
So go figure. Other suggestions were the mourning dove in 1951,
that's
the
a nice bird.
pileated woodpecker,
Another good bird.
1951 and 1953. So someone really wanted that.
These are solid birds.
Scarlet Tanager,
Don't know what that
also
Don't know what that is.
1951.
Probably sounds small
I
like a
like,
songbird.
I like the name.
And then the wood duck in 1951. Those were also.
Okay.
Uh,
These are
running.
way better bird suggestions.
So there's actually a poll that goes up in 1949 where they put together a commission of 7 men. They nominate bird options and then they polled school children to vote on them. And all the kids picked the Scarlet Tanager.
Oh, I'm looking. This is a sick bird.
Let's see. I mean, that looks really cool. It's like a It is bright scarlet and it has black wings. And
If I'm a kid, I'm picking this bird because
It's
I'm
a
a
pretty
simple
cool-looking bird.
fool.
So the Minneapolis school children all picked the Scarlet Tanager. And I guess we don't like to listen to children in Minnesota because that did not happen. So the Minneapolis Tribune asked adults their favorite in one of their columns, and adults chose the robin. Womp womp.
Boo, that's like a boring
I
tanager.
assume that's several other states, right?
Let me see. Michigan, Connecticut, Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
Yep.
We definitely can't have the same state bird as Wisconsin.
That would be sacrilege. So in that same poll, less than 1% picked the loon.
But they just didn't know.
So the loon is the dark horse candidate through
It
all this.
truly is.
I am even more intrigued and leaning forward.
And discussions kept going on. So in 1951, right before the Minnesota legislative session, the curator of birds at the American Museum of Natural History did an interview with the Minneapolis Tribune and gave the loon a little bit of a push out of the nest, if you will.
Bird expert favors loon as state birds. If Dr. Robert Cushman Murphy could vote on it, he'd pick the loon as Minnesota's state bird. Dr. Murphy, Lamont Curator of Birds, American Museum of Natural History in New York, New York, is here to preside at the American Ornithologists Union Convention at Minnesota Museum of Natural History at University of Minnesota. You have 10,000 lakes in Minnesota, and the loon is a waterfowl, Dr. Murphy said. It seems to me that it would be the ideal state bird. Mrs. Murphy, who is not an ornithologist, expects to have a book published soon. There's no title for it yet other than Naturalist's Wife, Mrs. Murphy said, but that's what it's about. You can imagine what it is to spend 40 years with a naturalist, said her husband.
Apparently not, because we need a book about it.
So they interview a number of bird experts here. They interview Dr. Abelardo Moreno of Havana, Cuba. They interview Dr. J.L. Morey, University of Minnesota. They interview Dr. and Mrs. Leonard Wing. And I'm calling shenanigans on that name. That's a little too on the nose, don't you think?
I mean, maybe
More
that's
like on the beak.
Maybe that's like, what's that? Is it like numerology or something that's like your name predicts
Yeah.
what will happen in
Yeah,
your
maybe
life?
On the
by
beak.
having a name Wing, they were just psychologically primed to be interested in birds.
What else were you going to go
Okay,
into?
Fair
Like-
enough.
So in 1961, lawmakers decided to give another push to the loon again, and the Minnesota Ornithologists Union hopped on board. So you know it has the backing it needs.
Now, is that like a labor union or just like an affinity club?
I'm sure it's just an affinity club,
I-
but it could be a labor.
Are there
union.
intense labor management crises but in the ornithology field?
I wouldn't know.
The Ornithologist Local 544.
Okay, so this is just an article from the Minneapolis Morning Tribune, February 19th, 1961, talking about the push of ornithologists saying, like, the loon would be a great state bird. And I just like, they lay out their arguments in a very clear fashion.
Yes. To the editor, the Minnesota Ornithologists Union has voted to back the common loon as the state bird of Minnesota and make an all-out effort to get this session of the Minnesota legislature to pass such a bill. We solicit the help of interested persons and ask that they write letters to their senator and representative urging their support. The Minnesota Ornithologists Union favors the common loon for the state bird because, 1, the loon is a typical bird of the northern states such as Minnesota and is synonymous with the wilderness area. 2, it is a bird which is common throughout our state in migration and nests in almost all lakes of 100 acres or more from the Twin Cities on north. 3, it is common enough so that all persons can see it, and it is rare enough to challenge people to search for it and feel a keen sense of pleasure for having found it. 4, because it is a black and white bird, it would reproduce well on all publicity going out about Minnesota or for programs and bulletins. 5, no other state has a common loon for a state bird.
And I would say that's a big point in its
Yeah.
favor, considering everyone else is doing the same thing.
Exactly. 6, the call of the loon is one that will not soon be forgotten by anyone who has heard it while visiting one of our many lakes. And 7, it is unfortunate that the American goldfinch, a state bird of several other states, is still being thought of and used as the state bird of Minnesota. It is only the unofficial bird of Minnesota. Sincerely, Forrest V. Snrad. How do you... There's not enough vowels in his name. Strnad. Forrest V. My cat typed on the keyboard. Forrest V. Snrad, President, Minnesota Ornithologists Union, Casson, Minnesota. back when the Ornithologist Union still had a lot of political pull in
Mhm.
Minnesota.
I just love that
Them and
number
the
7, they're
Teamsters.
like,
The
the
good old days.
frickin' goldfinch is not our state bird. Can you please stop saying that?
It seems that they won because I have never heard of the goldfinch
No.
being referred to as Minnesota's bird.
Or those who
This-
spoke of the goldfinch as Minnesota's state bird were silenced by the Ornithologists Union.
Hashtag Union strong.
Hell yeah.
So they said basically like the loon migrates throughout Minnesota. It's easy to spot and it will look great on promotional photos. That was a big thing because they were like, it's black
It's
and
a
white.
sexy bird.
Well, they
Oh.
were saying it's black and white. So
Because
it's
color
easy.
hadn't been invented yet.
That's
In
true.
61?
It was just coming in then. You're right.
You're right. Literally everything was black and white before then.
Yeah, that's
What
what
movie?
Calvin's dad told me, and
Yeah,
I believe
exactly.
him.
Yeah, so those were all points that they took up. And then Dwayne Warner, who was the curator of ornithology at the U's Bell Museum of Natural History, said, "Have you ever heard the wild cry of the loon across a lonesome lake of northern Minnesota at evening? You never forget it."
That is true. I
He's
have
not wrong.
I have distinct childhood memories of hearing loon calls out on a lake.
It's very distinct. It's usually at night, I feel like, and it's
Sunset?
or at least sunset, and it has a kind of unearthly quality to it.
It's very distinctive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing else sounds like that. And that's why, just as kind of a side note, the loon call does make an appearance basically in like every movie or show where they're supposed to be in quote unquote the wilderness.
Yeah.
You'll hear a loon call, but like even if it's a desert, I'm pretty sure it was like in Infinity War or something on like an alien planet
Wow.
is how distinctive it's
I
become.
mean,
It's like,
you don't know that there aren't loons on alien planets.
and I wouldn't be surprised if there were on account of the glowing red eyes. But that will come later. So another advocate of the loon being our state bird commented that they can run on the water for a quarter mile.
What?
And he said, apparently, show us a legislator who can do that.
Hey,
Take that,
take that.
legislators.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
so
a good energy.
it was a bipartisan effort. So 3 liberals and 2 conservatives introduced the bill.
Finally, something that we can unite on.
Representative Lauren Rutter of Kinney said in the committee that many Minnesotans had written to him to agree that the loon, quote, typified the wilderness and the lake areas of our state. Representative Reuben Wee of Balaton, who was a backer of the Robins in the race, challenged Rutter and said, "Give us a demonstration of the call of the loon." And Rutter said, "I am sorry, but I cannot." And then the article says, "Feathers slightly ruffled. I am not a bird caller."
They like puns as much as we do.
Yeah.
It's
really
a tough
do.
call to make. I don't know that I can do it.
Exactly. So Representative Edward Barsness of Glenwood came in support of the loon and said the loon's call has a certain sweet sadness that reminds me of an Irish tenor singing, "I'll take you home again, Kathleen."
I will take you home, Kathleen, across the ocean wild and wide. And when the fields are fresh and green, I'll take you to your home again.
So apparently later on the House floor, Rutter gave colleagues a pointed stare as he said, "The steadfast loon mates for life."
Oh,
So we're bringing culture wars into this.
Exactly. I guess the St. Paul Pioneer Press reporter at the time thought it was thought-provoking, deeply funny, and probably an aid to the passage of the bill. So it sounds like it was a very good-natured debate, and they were probably enjoying having something a little bit lighter to discuss. But the House approved the bill in an 88-25 vote, and the Senate voted yes 56-7. And then on March 13th, 1961, Governor Elmer L. Anderson signed the bill into law. And if you would like to, Josie, you can read us the official statute.
1.145 State Bird, Subdivision 1, Loon. The loon, Gavia Immer, is the official bird of the state of Minnesota. Subsection 2, photograph. A photograph of the loon shall be preserved in the office of the Secretary of State.
Probably a mugshot is what I imagine.
Yeah, it's
a loon.
a loon looking startled.
Yeah, a loon caught in the
Now, if you
ocean.
go around to any other states, we've got your number.
That's right.
So anyway, so you can read that online if you are so inclined. But that is our It's on the books now. So that kind of concludes, to be honest, the history portion of this podcast. But I kind of wanted to talk a little bit on the natural history side of things about the loon and present to you some fun facts. And at the end, you guys can tell me if you are on board with the loon still being our state bird or if you would like to switch camps to the Scarlet Tanager. So let's get our bearings on General Loonacy, which, fun fact, was almost the name of our tour company.
No, it was going to be Looney Tours.
Yes, exactly. But we thought it might be offensive, so we didn't do it.
Among other reasons.
Among other reasons.
So there are 5 species in the loon family, but the one we're going to talk about today, yeah.
What? I thought there's just loon.
The loons that we see are called the common loon, and I guess that does imply that there's a more rare loon.
There's some in Eurasia. Loons, which are the size of large ducks or small geese,
I'm not wrong.
resemble these birds in shape when swimming. Like ducks and geese, but unlike coots and grebes.
Yeah, it was a really interesting.
The loons
Coots and grebes? Is this like Clockwork Orange slang? What is going on?
I don't know what to tell you. That's what I'm reading.
Okay.
Whoa! Cormorants are not too distant relatives of loons, and like them are heavy-set birds whose bellies, unlike those of ducks and geese, are submerged when swimming. Loons in flight resemble plump geese with gulls' wings that are relatively small in proportion to their bulky bodies.
I've had it with this body shame.
I've had it with this body-shaming Loonacy.
Yeah. I hope we've learned our lesson. Okay, so there's 5 species in the loon family. The one we're talking about today, like you guys said, is the common loon. Their scientific name is Gavia Immer. Gavia is the genus name, and then the Immer part is more specific, but Gavia is the Latin word for seabird.
Seabird? I see any bird and I like it.
And Immer is a bit more interesting because it kind of has 2 meanings. So Immer could be related to Latin immersus, meaning to plunge or submerge, like immersion, which is appropriate because loons are diving birds and they catch fish. But it's also reported to come from the Swedish, I'm going to do my absolute best, himbrimi, which means ashes, referring to the loons like black and white coloring. So common loons eat mainly fish. They also consume crustaceans, snails, salamanders, leeches, aquatic insects, and frogs. They breed on freshwater lakes across North America, from Alaska to British Columbia to the maritime Canadian provinces, and then down to some of our northern U.S. states and all the way over to Greenland and Iceland.
Whoa.
So they're pretty well dispersed, which I think is kind of cool.
But they are a northern bird.
They're a northern bird, right. We're talking about Minnesota, obviously. We have more loons. We have about 12,000. More loons than any other U.S. state except Alaska. The amount of breeding pairs that we have around here hovers around 4,650, which is about 30% of the total pairs in the U.S.
In that case, I would definitely bet that we have more loons per square foot
than any other place.
Right.
Alaska's so big.
A large majority of our tagged loon population here actually winters in the Gulf of Mexico. So to learn more about the common loon, we're going to start where all good stories start, with a romance. In springtime, male loons will migrate to their breeding lakes to establish a territory for nesting. Now, Josie, would you happen to know how they establish their breeding territory?
I'm going to guess they make a cool loon call.
Yes, they do. So unless a lake is very large, it will typically only have a single mated pair nesting on it. And they're very territorial. So that's an interesting thing, too, considering like the whole more loons per square feet conversation. Yeah.
Because we've got so many lakes.
They want to have their own lake. The females show up a few days or weeks after the males. So you imagine there's 2 snowbirds, loons, snowbirding in the Gulf of Mexico. The male goes on ahead to establish their territory. Oftentimes it will be the same lake as last year.
How do they know how to find them?
I would assume they recognize each other's calls.
That would make sense.
Sometimes they'll take over another male's lake or something like that. The research has proven that loons don't technically mate for life, but they're more like serial monogamists. So they often rejoin a mate from the previous year on the same territory. I think that's what they prefer.
But in a pinch, any loon will do.
Right. Or if a mate dies, or if a stronger male loon comes and takes over a lake, sometimes the female will go with.
Dang.
So when the female loon shows up and either rejoins her mate from last year or finds a new boy toy, their courtship behavior is described as subtle and quiet.
Wow.
And it involves swimming side by side and soft hooting to each other.
Cute.
Yes. So when loons lay their eggs, it's typically just one or two. They have a high level of investment in a small amount of young versus having a big brood or a big litter where there's more chances of survival. The eggs are 3 to 4 inches long, and they're usually olive green or brown with brown speckles. And I would love to see one day. Males and females actually share the job of keeping the eggs warm, although towards the end of incubation, the females tend to take care of the eggs more at night. And then after 28 days of incubation, we have a loonlet.
A loonlet? Is that the real
That
name?
is the real name.
That is the real name.
Isn't that so cute?
Sometimes life is actually serving you exactly what you need.
Exactly. So the thing that I came to realize in all this research, deep academics, lots of late nights, is that loonlets are just objectively and scientifically really, really cute. More than one .org or .edu site referred to them as little black puffballs. They're so, they're very fuzzy. They have little, ashy gray beaks, charcoal colored. They're
I'm
so
thinking,
cute.
these are the new cats. We need cheeseburger loonlet.
They weigh about 4 ounces. If there's 2 in a nest, they'll fight for dominance and they'll establish a hierarchy. And if you have siblings or have worked in childcare, you know that is a common thing. Even though the babies are able to leave the actual nest a day or so after they hatch, the loons remain very involved parents. The loonlets stay in the brooding area, which is usually a small cove on the lake, and they eat leeches, other little things that their mom and dad actually bring them. So they are they have food deliveries. They're door dashed every day. They gain about an ounce a day.
Dang.
Wow.
But they can triple their weight in the first week of their life. So they're growing pretty fast. One of my favorite things about them is that during their first week, the loonlets will spend a lot of time riding around the lake on their parents' backs.
Yes.
So they can actually tuck in underneath the parents' wings on their backs and stay warm. And it protects them from underwater predators. One of their biggest predators at that age is the evil, evil muskie that I hate so much.
Muskies are
They
there
jump
eating
up
them?
from the water and snatch them. Wow.
At about 3 or 4 weeks old, the loonlets are too big to back ride, but they will still try to catch a lift. But mom and dad, so they'll still try to hop up on it.
Every parent knows exactly what that's like.
Do you think the loons ever get sad because one time they give their little kid a piggyback ride and then one day they never do it again?
I'm absolutely sure that happens. I don't know how to explain it, but
I
I'm
think
very
we
attached
need to
it.
write a touching children's novel about it.
So at 6 to 7 weeks, the loonlets enter what is known to us all as the awkward stage, and their fuzzy, black baby down is sticking out, and their feathers are coming in. They just kind of look a little mangy.
Yeah.
I've been there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We all have. We can all relate. So between 8 to 11 weeks, their juvenile plumage comes in fully and they start practicing flying, but they're still young enough that they still beg their parents for food, which is another just adorable side note here.
Relatable.
Yeah, again, I was going to say basically all teenagers, but they reach fledgling age at about 3 months and they're able to fly and they can leave the lake where they were born. Then they spend about 2 to 4 years maturing, which again, in the animal kingdom, I feel like this is fairly high investment in young and in development. They're not breeding as soon as they reach maturity. They spend some time.
They need to make sure they can make a down payment on a house.
Well, exactly. You don't want to get a lake right out of loon school. So then once those young are mature enough, they come back to the breeding grounds and the whole thing starts all over again. And then we play Mother Earth and Father Time from Charlotte's Web and I cry. So then by the time they're adults, they weigh 8 to 12 pounds. In the summertime, their summer plumage, I should say, is black feathers with white spots. And the feathers on their heads are iridescent.
Yeah.
And they shift from black to green. In the wintertime, they get a winter coat and they're gray above and then white underneath. So they better blend in with their surroundings.
Don't know if I've ever seen a winter loon. I guess they don't winter here.
They don't winter here. They're gone.
Ah.
Exactly. So most importantly, in my opinion, loons have what every single source refers to as a dagger-like beak.
Hell yeah.
And glowing red eyes.
Yes, my beauties.
They're just very distinctive.
Yeah.
So we talked about earlier, loons are a diving bird, and they can actually dive up. Actually, you know what? Let's have you guys guess. How
10
deep do you
feet.
think they can dive?
40 fathoms.
Say, Alex.
Okay. I'm going to guess they can go 40 feet down.
250 feet underwater.
What?
Dang.
Right?
250 feet?
Yes.
Under the water?
Yes. Loons are able to dive this low because unlike most birds, which have hollow bones, loons actually have dense, heavy bones.
Huh.
Oh,
So it actually allows
thick
them
bones.
to... Yeah, exactly. It allows them to submerge.
And they can still fly.
Kind of. So they can also stay underwater for up to 5 minutes at a time. Unfortunately, there's a reason that most birds try to be light, and that is because birds like to
Fly.
Yes, birds go up. And loons can too, but because of their heavy bones and awkward gait, they have to take off from the water. Loons are really designed for swimming. Their bodies are kind of long and torpedo-shaped, and their legs are set really far back on their bodies, which makes them very efficient at propelling themselves forward in the water, but very, like, forward heavy. So they kind of, like, can't really walk on land. They just kind of tip forward.
So they don't want to land anywhere that's not water because then they're not getting back up.
Yes. So, and this is where it's kind of like they're such an elegant bird if you watch them underwater, but they need 100 to 600 foot runway of water to paddle themselves up to take off.
But that is one of the coolest things about them is,
Yeah.
you know, when they take off, you see them sort of skittering across and you hear that like squeaky sound that their wings make, that, you know.
Yeah.
This is something that can kind of lead to problems, which is when loons land on like icy roads in the wintertime, they might think they're lakes because they're reflective, but then they are unable to go anywhere. So if you ever see a loon that's like out in the road,
Put in a lake.
Yeah, basically call the DNR. Statewide info number is 1-800-652-9093, and they will help reset the loon.
And they have to migrate then before the lake ice is over.
Right, and that's probably why they migrate, because otherwise what would they do?
That means they have to be following waterways or lake-rich areas the whole way down.
Yeah. In 1987, the Seney National Wildlife Refuge in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, there was a loon known as ABJ. It was a male, and he was banded as a chick. So we know for sure that he was born in 1987, right? 1990, in the same waters, they banded her. She's FE, but they call her Faye. And that was a female. And she, at that point, was at least 4 years old, which they could tell because she had been born. And she had obviously returned to the breeding grounds. And they don't do that for 2 to 4 years. So they were pegging her at about 4 years old. ABJ and Faye had their first babies together in 1997. And they became one of the most productive and long-lived loon pairs ever documented. They produced 32 hatchlings together over the next 25 years.
Wow.
So extremely long-lived. 29 of the babies successfully fledged and launched. So not only were they like really prolific and like good at having babies, but they were really good at raising them. Like that's apparently a really good statistic. They only lost 3. And then many returned to the same refuge as breeding adults. So they played a big role in like this whole population. ABJ and Faye split up in 2022.
Oh, no.
The pandemic got to them.
Right, exactly. As it did with so many relationships. But like, think about that. Like in 1997, they have their first pair and they don't split up until 2022. It's longer than most marriages I know.
It statistically, I think, longer than most marriages.
We got to ask them their secrets. So it's suspected that in 2022, a younger loon couple kicked them out of their territory. Now,
Gentrifiers.
Exactly. The interesting thing here, though, is Faye quickly found a new mate.
Oh, Faye moved on.
With whom she hatched her 40th chick.
Oh my gosh. Dang, Faye.
So she moved on fast. ABJ had a little bit of trouble. He was, according to the article, he had
as old as time.
It was spring chicken.
A rough year of bachelorhood and broke his upper mandible.
No. Is he okay?
Poor guy.
He's gone through a dark time. He's trying to figure out who he is after that long of a relationship.
Yeah, still.
He did survive, though.
He will be played by Leonardo DiCaprio in his next Oscar-nominated performance.
Leonardo DiCaprio loon.
Okay, so last summer, at the age of at least 39, Faye hatched her 43rd and 44th known chicks.
Wow.
But it's cool because it's like, okay, if we have recorded these ones, for sure there's other ones that aren't tracked that have been this prolific and stuff. But like, that's just, I don't know, such a crazy lifespan. And the interesting thing too is they don't have a period of like senescence. So they don't have an old age. They go on reproducing until they die. So yeah, so we'll see what happens this summer. ABJ will be 39 this summer and Faye will be at least 40. And she's been tracked for 35 years. I don't know. I think the ABJ and Faye story really made me kind of forever in the camp of loons because I feel like they're very persistent. I feel like they're very loyal. They clearly come back to the same location, but they do snowbird, which I think is very appropriate for Minnesota.
Mhm.
And I like the fact that if something goes wrong, they will make a new plan.
Well, the fact that they are such a lake creature.
Yeah.
And
I
we're such a
feel
lake people.
We're such a lake people
People.
in a lake land.
Mm.
A land of lakes,
A
if you
land
will.
of lakes, if you will. I mean, that alone I think is good, but they're visually striking. They're beautiful. They have the most unique noises.
Mhm.
Bird, and they're very distinctive.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So that kind of concludes my little safari, my loon safari.
Our ornithology corner.
Our ornithology corner with Hannah. So loons are obviously a really big part of our ecosystem. Around here, they are protected by state statutes, and federally, they're protected by the Migratory Bird Treaty Act of 1918. May I share with you, though, my favorite story that I found that I was like, yeah, loons forever. No other bird can be Minnesota. This is it.
Yes, please.
Okay. So basically, a few years ago, there's what they refer to as a grizzly crime scene near a lake in Maine.
A human crime scene?
Nope. An eagle crime scene. Or shall we say a double crime scene. So there's a dead bald eagle lying on the shore of this lake near a dead loon chick. Now, that already sounds like a little bit of crime.
This is the cold open for a NCIS loon.
NCIS
episode.
Northwoods.
The game warden who found it collected the dead birds. They take it in for examination. They x-ray it. And what x-rays reveal is that there is a puncture wound in the bald eagle's chest that went all the way into its heart.
Oh, my
Loon
goodness.
stabbed in the heart.
So investigators basically came to the conclusion that the eagle, which they will often prey on loonlets, eagle swoops down to grab the baby loon and did grab it, but before it could take back off. So in an instant, one of the adult loons shot up from underwater and stabbed the eagle through the heart with its
pretty
beak.
badass. And that's kind of what Minnesota did to
I'm going to
ICE a little
say,
bit.
I can't think of any possible political symbolism behind an eagle attacking a poor defenseless loonlet and then another loon swooping in.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not advocating stabbing anyone with your beaks.
Hmm.
I am just going to say, I think what it shows is that loons are very protective of the things that they value. I think it shows that they have great reaction time
Mhm.
and they know their assets because, this is an eagle that's coming in. It flies pretty well. That's kind of their thing. Loons cannot do that as well. They couldn't take off from the water to combat or to get their loon chick back, but apparently had the reaction time to be underwater, ramp up some speed. And, unfortunately in that situation, the loonlet did die, but I
But
think it
Benjamin?
shows a very dedicated and protective parent with a fast response time.
Mhm.
And I really think that makes the loon my personal choice for state bird. Sorry, Scarlet Tanager.
There's no other bird that I think encapsulates our state in the same way.
Right?
And as a coda, I think we have to mention the significance of loons in recent years. Obviously, very recently, it's become an emblem of resistance and protest. But I feel like loons have been having a moment for a few years now. They're not that long ago, within the last decade, we got our first soccer team as a state, and it's the Minnesota United, but their mascot is the loons. In 2024, a giant statue of a loon was unveiled at the corner of Snelling and University by the stadium. See our episode on Monument Madness for that. But then I remember in the several year lead up to the change of the flag, which will be a subject of a podcast coming soon, there were a lot of different designs proposed, and a lot of them incorporated loons. And some began submitting specifically loons with laser beams coming out of their eyes, and it became a sort of much memed, popular symbol online. And eventually, although a loon didn't make it on the flag that was eventually picked, our new state seal since 2024 has a loon in it. And it's a really cool, in my opinion, stylized drawing.
They made a laser loon library card with the St. Paul Public Library, too. That was this hugely popular
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
Where they were like, if we're not going to make a flag out of it, we'll make a library card out of it.
Exactly, because everyone, we'll get to the history of the flag, but missed opportunity without having a loon shooting lasers out of its eyes on our flag.
Yeah.
And then came the ICE invasion in December of 2025 and January of 2026, and loons became this kind of symbol of resistance, especially after someone had the idea of putting it over the Rebel Alliance symbol from Star Wars. It was, in fact, started with a designer from Moorhead, Minnesota named Bernardo Anderson. And he shared his design inspired by the Star Wars Rebel Alliance logo. And since that, it immediately took off, including various riffs on that same basic design idea. And it has recently become one of the most popular tattoo requests in Minnesota tattoo parlors. It's on flags, it's on buttons, it's on all sorts of things. It has become really this kind of iconic symbol of resistance in this moment, which I think is cool.
Well, and it really goes back to the one of the main reasonings that was given in the first initial push to make the loon the state bird, because it looks really good in print.
It does.
That's what counts.
It's a very graphically strong bird.
Really. So as a sign off, I want to have Josie read this touching tribute to the loon, published in the Duluth News Tribune, June 3rd, 1961.
Sir, I am glad Minnesota chose the loon as its state bird. When I think of Minnesota, I think of trees, lakes, and streams. I think of game, of birds. I think of old Indian trails and old logging roads, old camping grounds. I have camped in remote areas of Minnesota. Wandering away from camp, I have walked in the solitude of great trees as in a cathedral of the Great Spirit. I felt small and alone. I felt odd. Was I lost? Yes, I was, and I was afraid. Suddenly out of the sky and far away came the cry of a loon. A little startling at first, but coming my way and reassuring. I borrowed hope from his call, loud and clear. I gathered strength from his flight, stout and swift. I derived joy at his comical antics. Then I felt no longer afraid or alone, and I was not lost. I love the loon. I hope Minnesota lets him be. Will not gather him into confinement, but will let him seek out his heart's desire, freedom, and life in the lonely, untouched reaches of nature, maybe a place known only to the loon. Hugs and butterfly kisses, Dixie Chase. Superior. And that's it for this episode. We'll be back next time with another deep dive into Minnesota's storied past. You can find detailed show notes for this and all episodes at minnesotaunknown.com/podcast. We'll post a link there to each episode, along with features such as accompanying images, links to more info, and lists of sources cited. If you have questions, comments, corrections, complaints, or compliments, please email us at info@minnesotaunknown.com. We'd truly love to hear from you. Unless it's mean, and then I'll cry. You can find Minnesota Unknown wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe or follow so you don't miss an episode. And if you have a moment to rate and review, that would really help others find us. We also give history walking tours around the Twin Cities. To learn more about our current and upcoming tours, head to minnesotaunknown.com. Minnesota Unknown is produced, hosted, written, and researched by Hannah Norton, Josie Bergman, and Alex Weston. Our theme song is by Union Shakedown. This episode is copyright 2026 by Minnesota Unknown, LLC. All rights reserved.
Speaking of popular television shows, let's talk about the Great Depression. Other birds were suggested besides the robin, the meadowlark, and the American goldfish.
Which was immediately disqualified for not being a bird.
Because someone pulled out their magnifying glass and said, hold on.
Wait a second.
These are fins, not wings. Well, goddaughter, Hubert was right.
Slaps on the ground. Okay, so anyway, speaking of arousing, let's talk about the Great Depression. Speaking of the circle of life, let's talk about the Great Depression. So there's actually a poll that goes up in 1949.
Is that where they put a flag?
What? Poll? Oh my God.
Speaking of goods and creeps, let's talk about the Great Depression.
Speaking of smooth rides, let's talk about the Great Depression. You know what's crazy, though, is that I wrote a really good outline for this, and it's still not working. Oh my gosh. Anyway, speaking of feet pics, let's talk about the Great Depression.
Yeah, again, this is going to be the first podcast that is all outtakes.
It's going to be the first podcast we couldn't get anything out of.